horrible to one another.
Totally.
Got
So,
it.
Charlie, man, it is really great to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a minute. How have you been?
Good. Yeah, it's been a while. I've been delighted to see that you've come back to YouTube.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long story there. We can dive into if you'd like.
What's the return been like?
The return, scary. Uh, Tons of feelings around it. The context of it is, I don't know how much you're familiar with, but we stopped making content in large part because my co-founder and I had a falling out. Just were very unaligned in the business. Also, our friendship broke down. So it was like a very trying emotional time for a year or two as I sorted through all of that. I wasn't clear if I was going to take the business over or just do something completely different. And coming back it feels really right. I am so happy that I wound up buying it. We talked about the prospect of me selling to him, which was genuinely on the table. I received an offer. I thought about it, and it feels like, thank God. I'm so happy that I spent all of my money to acquire this old but important to me YouTube channel. So it's been really, really nice. And also, I'm still sorting through what I want to do now that I have it, because it's clear that I don't want to do the same exact thing that I did. I just don't know what exactly the new thing's going to be.
Yeah. So for anybody out there that doesn't know, your channel is Charisma on Command.
Yeah.
About 7 million subscribers. You've been doing this for like 10 years,
hmm
and I've been watching probably for like 8 years. And your channel has been a big inspiration. And I think you are the perfect combination of education and entertainment,
hmm
because I'm never really seeking psychological help or like charisma advice. But then, I'm scrolling on YouTube and I see your video and I'm like, oh, that gets me to click. And then I walk away though, feeling pretty good about like what I just watched. So I want to commend you. You do a great job of just making it entertaining and educational.
Thank you. Do you, I'm curious, if nothing comes to mind, that's totally fine. Is there anything offhand that you remember taking or liking or going like, oh, I'm glad that I watched that?
Actually, there's something that you said that I think about every single day.
Oh,
And
really?
that is how to turn a negative interaction into a positive one.
Okay.
Because I'm addicted to YouTube comments. I read them all. And I know you're not supposed to do that. But, as you probably are aware of, a lot of them are negative. And I always try to think, how can I flip this around? How can I
hmm
turn this guy's insult into like a compliment, or how can I get this person on my side?
Mm.
And I remember you talking about, if you can take an insult and turn it into like a compliment for yourself, you'll win them over. And I love trying to do that. It's like a little game I play.
Do you go
So
back and forth in the comments with these people?
rarely, but
Okay.
the other day some guy was saying, "Oh, this channel is really sketchy. Can't trust him."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Thank you. Sketches are what I do best because that's what I do. I draw." And I think about like a good example is Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, when the guy's like, "You are the worst pirate I've ever heard of," and
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah.
"But you have heard of me." Instantly you win him over. So yeah, I love that lesson.
Yeah. Did that guy ever get back to you, sketchy guy?
I remember it ended really fun. We were both laughing about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
There is this thing that happens, particularly in the YouTube comments, where people will say some of the meanest stuff that they say anywhere in their lives. But when they encounter a human on the other side who doesn't immediately jump into defensiveness, it flips very quickly. They're almost excited, flattered, and a bit embarrassed that they got the attention of the content creator because they thought they were shouting into the abyss. So I'm happy to hear that you were able to flip that one.
Yeah, and I guess that's my first question is, how do you turn a negative experience into a positive one, or like a negative interaction into a positive one? If somebody's coming at you very aggressively, how
Uh,
do you get them to respect you and like you?
yeah, I mean, hmm. I'll go. We started talking about some of the tactics. My opinion on this has shifted a little bit, and I'll just, because I know you wanted to talk about how the content creation journey has shifted, and my opinions on charisma, confidence, respect, all that kind of stuff. One of the big shifts is I've paid way less attention to making other people have any sort of experience when they're around me, whether that's making them appreciate me, like me, respect me, be kind to me. So there's a dropping of that sort of management in a lot of areas of my life, which isn't to say that I didn't gain a tremendous amount of value from it for a period of time when I was, absorbing these mean comments. So I will answer the question, I guess, more tactically, is the underlying thing that I think informs it is that you're often dealing with projections when you're dealing with unkindness from other people, right? Like something happened in that guy's day. He didn't come into your channel like feeling a bunch of joy and then be like, oh my God, this guy's channel is awful. There was something going on in his life that made him spew that unkindness to you. And so if you can stay grounded in the fact that like, this is not about me, it's way easier to not get defensive and then to respond with the misinterpreting to the positive joke that actually signals to that person that you are a human being, that, you know, that he does not need to behave this way. You also, I think, in the way that you responded, allowed him to not dig his feet in. One of the things that defensiveness does, if you were to like clap back at him or have a really catchy insult, which is something that everybody wants, they all want to know, man, I wish I'd said that thing. That would have really shown them in that moment. Unfortunately, even when you get that right, even if you win that exchange, it sets up the two sides thing. Like now you're both in your trenches where they hate you and you hate them, and now you're just going to lobby artillery back and forth at one another or subtly do it passive aggressively. So the thing that you did, which is the first time that someone is aggressive or even passive aggressive to you, it is often best to purposely misinterpret what they did or said to the positive. Very, very helpful to do. Beyond that, we have videos on this with Robert Downey Jr. and other people. You can see it live. But one of the things that we talk about is boundary setting. So there's a way to subtly do the boundary setting, and then there's a way to more overtly do the boundary setting. The way to subtly do it is to not necessarily call them out directly. So it's like, oh man, it's getting kind of hot in here. Well, that was pretty testy. You know, like there's a passive, not you did this, it's getting hot in here. I was like, wow, that got awkward. You know, this situation is uncomfortable. The more direct boundary setting would be like, if you speak to me like that, I'm going to leave the conversation. And you can escalate from purposely misinterpreting to the positive, which can like really quickly flip things, and then you just have a fun interaction after that, to more general boundary setting, which is, you know, that got awkward. And then finally, if it keeps going, to say to the person, if you do X, I will Y, which is generally leave this interaction. Another thing that you could do in that middle zone is to withdraw attention, if you're in a group, from the person who is being unkind to you. So a lot of people try to interact, especially guys, with other dudes by cutting them down or saying, you know, making jokes at their expense. And if you just talk to other people in a group while that's happening, very, very quickly that behavior will shift towards something else, because it generally wasn't a full, wholehearted attempt to upset or hurt you. It was an attempt to belong in the group. And if you indicate that this is not how you belong in this group, they will try a different tactic. And then if they do that, you can come right back to them with the attention and the engagement.
Yeah, I love what you just said. And you reminded me of a tactic that I use that I don't have to use very often, but it's like 3 levels to deal with people who are wronging me. Like level 1 is like, how can I fix this? Level 2 is, you don't exist to me, you're done. And level 3 is like, I'm actively seeking revenge on you.
Okay.
And usually level 2, I've never had to get to level 3. Like if they're gone in my life, if I excommunicate them, it usually works.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing that you're mostly speaking to is when you're like stuck in a situation with somebody and you have to make it better. You can't just, you know, if you're in an interview with somebody or you're a coworker or maybe a family member, you have to like fix this relationship. How can you steer things?
Well, I think the illusion that you have to fix any relationship is one that if you let go of, things will go a lot better. You may really want to. And I think when you feel that you have to fix a relationship, it implies desperation, and you will naturally tend towards manipulation because there's no other option. This has to work, and it's out of your control. They could continue to be a jerk to you. When you instead drop into the fact that, like, man, I really want this relationship to go well, it enables you to show up with the boundaries that we just talked about. But also when you're expressing those boundaries, you can vulnerably say to your mother, your sister, your coworker, like, what I really want is to come into the office every day with you, you know, for this coworker example, and feel awesome around you. Like, I really, really want that. That is much easier to vulnerably share when you don't feel that it has to be the case. When it has to be the case, you're going to make nice, people please, all of this other kind of stuff, because you can't accept that some portion of this relationship is out of your control. But when you do accept that their half of the relationship is ultimately out of your control, it enables genuine vulnerability, which is like, look, I'm going to come right up to the edge of what I can do, which is say how much it would please me to be on good terms with you. But beyond that, I can't go any further. The rest is on you.
I like that you just brought up boundaries because I wanted to talk to you about that today.
Sure.
Right before this, I was looking up gaslighting and
Yeah.
just like the different techniques of gaslighting that people use. And a lot of times you can come at them with like a genuine concern and they'll be like, oh, I was just joking.
Yeah.
Or like, you're the only one that feels that way. Everybody else sees it this other way. I noticed that a lot of the techniques are about making you feel like you're alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nobody wants to be isolated. That's like a deep-seated human fear.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you set healthy boundaries.
Well, so starting with the gaslighting thing, are you talking about this type of gaslighting behavior? Like healthy boundaries? Because I can imagine healthy boundaries in a lot of different circumstances.
Right, right. Yeah, I guess let's just start with gaslighting in general. Like, how do you deal with gaslighting?
Okay. The first thing is the energetic boundary with gaslighting. The problem with gaslighting is that you know what's going on. Something was off in that communication. Something was violent in the way they made that joke. And you felt not the physical violent, but the intent to harm in it. And then you said, ooh, that was pretty. And like, oh no, I was just kidding. The first gaslight is they attempt to do it to you, but then you fundamentally do it to yourself. You leave the part of you that hurts. It's like, no, my heart hurts. I could feel this. And you go to your head and you're like, well, technically they did just say that that's a nice shirt. Or it's like, and you start to rationalize, and your head is very, very good at never being 100% certain of anything. Because if you think about it, I'm not 100% certain that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. So how can I be 100% certain of what somebody's intent was, or if they were trying to hurt me? So your head can always buy the story of another person. The part of you that knows is the part of you have to stick with, is generally in the body. And you'll feel it when somebody insults you or is unkind to you. You won't necessarily be able to explain it to them, but you will feel pain. So the first step is to not gaslight yourself by leaving the feeling of discomfort in your own body. If you can do that, if you can hold that energetic boundary and not allow them to talk you out of your own experience, gaslighting goes away, like entirely. It cannot work on you. The hard thing is that what can happen in those situations is you'll be in a room where somebody has said something unkind or lied to you. Let's just take the example of somebody's cheating on you, right? Like, why are you trying to look at my phone? What's going on with you? Is something going on in your day? Are you on your period? Is like whatever the heck they say to make you feel crazy about what you did. The thing that generally needs to happen, the first boundary is the energetic one, where you go, oh, this really hurts. The second boundary is to recognize, I'm not going to solve this problem right now in direct connection with this other person. And it's to take physical space, to draw the boundary of space. Oftentimes, the people that gaslight do not want you to have enough privacy to feel through things on your own. They also do not want to create opportunities for you to connect with other people that they've been gaslighting. So they will find ways to gossip, shit talk, intervene, always play third wheel, so that you don't have alone time with other people that are experiencing the same thing, so that you don't bring up, this weird thing happened. And then they go, oh my God, that happened to me too. And you start realizing what's going down. So step one, energetic boundary. Step two is to take physical space. This can be very, very hard for people who have any sort of abandonment issue to recognize the relationship isn't over when I say, hey, I need some time. Like I don't want to talk for the rest of the day. Like I need to cool off. But if you can develop that skill to take space without being mean or cruel or violent, just, you know what, this isn't working for me, I need to step away, gaslighting will drop dramatically. You take space, you call someone that you trust, you talk it out with them, you get in contact with your own heart, your own gut, and you'll start really unpacking what happens. Gaslighting works when you try to solve the gaslighting in relationship with the person who's doing it, and they're never going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, that's well said. I like how you put things into like different levels of reactions.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you are very charitable in your first reaction. Like if something you feel like a comment was said, maybe a sleight of hand, like
Mm-hmm.
you give it charity. You're like, what, maybe that was a mistake. I'll interpret it positively.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when you do that, you open up so much space to just kind of walk through life in like a nice little bubble. Like your bubble goes from being really small to way bigger.
Yeah.
Because usually people don't, it's rare. Is it rare that people go to that second level and jab you twice?
Totally. Yes. I think so much, this is what I got wrong. let's say 96% of the time, the person may be having a bad day. I may have misinterpreted because I'm having a bad day. Like, there's some room for immediate healing and reconciliation 96% of the time. The problem is that 4% of the time, someone has something resembling a personality disorder that will cause them to repeatedly do these sorts of infractions. And this is where I made the mistake of being 100% charitable in my life. Like, it's on me. I can fix anything. I can turn it around all the time. And I think the 95.5 or the 96.4 is actually way more accurate. And the important thing is to stay with yourself, because I can tell you stories, but I have, in constantly being charitable, I have created these circumstances where I've been taken advantage of, exploited, stolen from, all of these sorts of things. And it's not because everybody does that. It's because a small percentage of the time when you think this stuff is happening, it's actually happening, and it's worse than that. But 95% of the time, it's like, oh, we can flip this in one exchange with a commenter.
Yeah, I love that. You got to balance being charitable with having boundaries.
Yes.
And if you're just charitable, you're going to get steamrolled. You're going to get walked all over. And if you have really strict boundaries, you're not going to have room for those like little playful moments.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does feel magical when you're like, wow, I, in the past, would have immediately made this person my enemy. But by just pausing for a little bit and not jumping towards we're on opposing sides, I have a friend, or I see, and the world seems like it is so much more full of potential and possibility and relationships that you can have.
And you made me think of truth versus offending people. You know, a lot of times we look at those two things as they're in conflict with one another.
Yeah.
Like if you tell somebody the truth, you're going to offend them. If you want to, coddle their feelings, you kind of have to not tell them the truth. What do you prioritize, the truth or their feelings?
Well, it's often a false choice, right? Though it is important to recognize that that's not always a false choice. There are times when telling someone the truth, for instance, that is working with or for me, that they're not doing good work and that I'm considering firing them, like that might upset their feelings. Somebody might respond to that with, thank you so much for telling me. This gives me the opportunity to turn things around. But there's definitely going to be people that are flatly hurt by that. And that is a choice that has to be made. I believe that in the long term, you want to side with truth because truth will win in the long term. It is a sorting mechanism. So in the example of somebody who is not doing well at work, if I try to coddle their feelings, which I've done, and I chose this example purposely, you will temporarily feel good in that relationship because there will be no friction, right? They're happy. You are happy that you made them happy. But the work will continue to depreciate. The company will suffer as a result of it. There will be mounting resentment built inside of you. And I've had this. That person who wasn't doing good work then goes on to hire somebody else or act as interviewer for somebody else. So like there's a corruption that starts to enter into wider areas of your life when you don't tell the truth. I think of telling the truth as paying your credit card debt. It doesn't feel good the moment you're like, ugh, like I'm going to send all this money out. But you're actually paying a past debt. The debt was told when you didn't act in alignment, didn't nip things in the bud as soon as they happened. And it can sometimes feel like, why would I tell the truth? It's so costly. And the answer is it's how you get out of paying horrible interest on your credit card debt for the rest of your life. And so at this point, I try never to go into debt with regards to the truth. I make mistakes from time to time and I have to correct them. But as soon as I realize that consciously, I tell the truth and I risk offending people. But there's a way we can talk about, there's a whole way to tell the truth, right? It's not just like, this is the truth. This is the only possible way I could communicate it. There's a whole spectrum of ways that I might communicate a challenging truth to a person that could allow it to be received more easily or more difficult or with more difficulty.
Yeah, it's like the movie Liar Liar, where he has to tell the truth about every single thing. It's like, we don't have to blurt the truth out every time we have a thought.
Sure.
There's that great quote from Thomas Sowell. When you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. And I guess in any situation, you can kind of assess, am I just trying to help myself? Am I just trying to get through the day? Well, I'll just tell this cashier, hey, it's a lovely day outside, even though it's miserable. I don't know. It's like a little white lie. But I think when it really counts, you always have to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there's definitely agree with Sowell on that one, right? We do not recognize a lot of the white lies that we tell. We convince ourselves are for the benefit of the other person. And I've done this. Like, I'm not going to go so hard on them because that's not kind to them. And what I've learned is that if you zoom out and you look long enough, take the employee that I didn't tell the truth to early. I set a precedent of them not understanding the quality of their work, which now has a cascading effect as they eventually didn't work out in the company and go try to get hired. And they're facing steeper levels of confusion because they thought for a longer period of time they were really doing good work. And so there's this impression, because there's a short-term release in tension in the relationship, that you're actually doing someone a favor. But tension is not bad. Conflict is not bad. Doesn't mean we need to resort to violence, but that was something that I didn't understand. Two people with different views that wish that things were going differently, still in relationship in some way, is not a bad thing. And yeah, the truth is, it's pretty much always, I mean, I say pretty much. I think of circumstances where, like, if I was in Germany in 1942 and I was hiding, like, Holocaust survivors, and the Nazis knocked on my door and they're like, is there anyone in here? I would not say yes. I would lie to them in that circumstances. But shy of that, it's outside of genuine life or death things, tell the truth is a fantastic way of being, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think little kids, they learn around 2 years old that if they say words that are not true, it can get them out of trouble.
Yeah.
And it's like this amazing discovery. They're like,
yeah,
wow, I can just lie and get out of anything. And so I believe they go through like a phase where they start lying constantly. And then it's very important that they get out of that phase, because if they don't, they won't learn how to play with others. They'll become a narcissist or a psychopath. So it's important that you get through that phase quickly.
Yeah. No, I think that is true, is that there are adults that are stuck without having learned lessons of like 2 and 3 years old. And these are compulsive liars who learn that they can have a short-term effect on other people's perception. And so they're quickly able to ascend in the social world. But we don't merely live in a social world. We live in a real world. So there was somebody at the company that I've sort of been alluding to that I didn't find out for a long time was a compulsive liar. Lied on their application, lied on their this, stole money from the company eventually. And there was definite benefits to that person for their compulsive lying. They would not have gotten the job if they hadn't lied on their application in order to do it. But the long-term consequences, not just to other people, which were enormous, but to them directly, will be that they spent all of this time not developing genuine skills to genuinely sustain a job or a relationship. And now they have to move from community to community, running the same cycle of compulsive lying, grifting, doing all that sort of stuff. And the reason this is worth knowing is we tend to, most of us, have some degree of our lives that is this. Like, we pretend that we like the job that we're in, even though we don't, because acknowledging to our coworkers or our boss that we don't like it might jeopardize our income. The cost could be the next monthly salary. But the benefit is that in 2 years, you will be far more likely to be in a job that you genuinely love if you are telling the truth about your experience, rather than trying to make people around you think a certain things to get that very short-term benefit.
That's brilliant. And you made me think of things like grade inflation. We're seeing a crisis where grades are going up across the board, but reading level, math skills going down.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how are the grades all going up? And it's like this whole time kids are going through school, and now they're getting told they're amazing. They're getting first place trophies, even though they got in last place. And they're in this little bubble. And when they finally graduate, they think they're awesome. And they walk out, and the real world just kind of smacks them in the face. And it's very sobering, and it's painful for a lot of kids. And have you heard of a growth mindset?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. This is something I've been thinking a lot about, of just how to talk to young kids. And it makes a tremendous difference. And so, like, growth mindset, you always want to speak to their effort. You want to say, I love how hard you worked on that. I love how you didn't give up. Great effort. Whereas a lot of times we talk to kids and we speak to their identity. We're like, you're so smart. You're so talented. You're so athletic. And so they go around thinking that's who they are, but then they shy away from challenges because they're like, if I fail, people are going to think that I'm not a good athlete. I'm not going to climb up that tall mountain, because if I fail, they're going to say, wait, you're not the good athlete that we thought you were. Yeah. So the results from just talking to students differently is huge difference. So I've been trying to be very mindful of how I talk to people with more like growth mindset if I can.
Yeah, I think that's great. If you think of what great inflation implies, it implies a static mindset, which is to say, look, you can't grow. So I'm going to have to just give you a better grade because there's no potential for you here. And that I've seen that now that I've seen the kids whose parents hired people to take their SATs for them, like all kinds of stuff, and see what happens in their life, even if they get to the college, even if they go cheat their way through medical school or whatever, and they do the thing. There's even if they get all the money and the wife and the thing and the whatever, there's a core lack of self-esteem that you can feel in them because they don't have that internal belief that they can grow and they can do it, and they are stuck constantly in that cycle of faking an identity they do not believe that they are. And that is a very, very painful experience, no matter how many toys and how much status you have.
That's brilliant. And I'm curious to know the difference between confidence and cockiness.
Mm. Well, I think cockiness is it's thin. Cockiness is, I am going to use language similar to what we've been talking about to create the impression of strength and of self respect and of stability. And it tends to have because it's not fully stable, take other people down, need to insert itself in every conversation. So anytime that somebody's like, wow, this really went well, it's like, that reminds me of the time that I did really well. So it requires constant reinforcement because it is floating only on words and the constant validation of other people. Whereas confidence is far more deeply rooted. I think people often try to root confidence in competence, and I think that's a fine place to put it, but I think it can even go deeper than that. So people will say, once you've built the business and done the thing, you're going to be way confident talking about it, which is totally true. But I think that there's a confidence that is deeper than having succeeded in the past, and it is the confidence of no matter what, I will be okay. Because there will always be aspects of life where you have not experienced them, right? Where you have not dove in, and that there will be still, you could be this very successful businessman, jump into something else and fail, right? And so if you're totally and constantly relying on this development of competence, there's an instability, even though it's far more stable than just talking about things, to your confidence. But if your confidence comes from every time I've done something, win, lose, rain or sunshine, I have been okay. I have survived. I've been in pain. I've been in suffering. I've been slapped down. I've been rejected, but I've been okay. I'm still breathing. That sort of confidence, when you really recognize that, like, oh, wow, it doesn't end. And even if it does end, I probably won't be there to notice it, right? Because it'll be over. That is a lifelong, perpetual confidence that is cross-domain, which is why that's where I tend to focus with people. I'm not anti-building confidence through doing the reps and doing all that kind of stuff, which is a really, really great way to build domain-specific confidence. But this broader confidence that I'm most interested in it's like just the confidence of being, you could even call it.
Yeah. I always like to think of things in a very visual way, like an analogy. So I'm thinking of confidence as like this big flashy menu. And if you have a big flashy menu, but your food sucks, you're there's nothing to back it up.
Yeah.
Whereas like confidence is having the great food behind it. And confidence, I think, is just really aligning the story that you have in your mind with reality. Like, is the story I tell myself lining up with what I can actually do? Can I execute on this belief that I have? And this one little trick that I learned, I do it in the gym. Whereas like, if you say you're going to do 10 reps and you do 8, you kind of feel like crap. You're like, I can't do what I think I can do. But if you say you're going to do 10 reps and you do 10 reps, you're like, all right, I'm confident. And if you want to build supreme confidence, you do one more. You always do one more than you say you're going to do. And then you're like, all right, I can actually do more than what I think I can do. And it builds confidence. So it's a little hack.
Got it. What do you feel when you aim for 10 and you hit 8? What is the experience that you have?
I'm like, oh man, I'm getting old. Yeah. I'm aware enough to know that, my body is just, father time is undefeated. But yeah, it does boost your confidence quite a bit when you actually do hit the target that you set out to hit.
Totally. And I would suggest that there is an additional confidence that is not require performance of any kind. that is just that is what you might call self-confidence. Is like whether I do zero, if I were in a car accident, I couldn't do any reps or anything like that. I think that there's the confidence that no matter what life throws at me, I will show up and be there. I might not win. I might not get the rep off my chest, but like I'll be there. I think that enables a really wide degree of freedom. And all the other forms of confidence, I don't mean to denigrate at all, but that's one that I've been coming to because I spend a lot of time trying to feel confident based on my accomplishments. And I had a very wide spanning confidence. I had the YouTube channel, I had friends, I was way more active in the gym, not as much as you, I could tell. But I probably had 10 more pounds of muscle and I was receiving compliments and all of those sorts of things. And I did still find, because this has been an obsession of my life, that I lacked there was some confidence lacking, or at least it was dependent upon my achievements. And that didn't sit well with me. So I guess I've gotten more into, like, you could call it the Western style of confidence, which is doing and achieving and having a track record of and overshooting, like you talked about, doing 11 instead of 10. And then there's the Eastern, which is like meditative sitting in the fact that you're alive and that's enough.
Yeah, that's great advice because I unfortunately do tie a lot of my confidence to performance and even to things that I totally can't control, like YouTube views.
Yeah.
If they're going down, it hurts. It really hurts.
Yeah.
I think that I talk to a lot of YouTubers and they're like biting their fingernails when their views are down. And when they're up, you feel like you're on top of the world.
Yeah.
I think you think that's just natural human nature?
I think that's a natural stage of certainly our 2025 culture, which is, I think that's the ego stage, which is really important. So I've had an issue as I was growing up with like the very spiritual people. And this was my own personal bias that would not really engage with the world. They would immediately jump to crystals and yoga and all of that, and they would skip the effectiveness and the relationships and the business building or the bodybuilding or any form of that. The way that I like to do it, and I'm learning to have less judgment of that because that was my own issue. The way that I like to do it, and I encourage other people to do, is like go achieve everything. Go set ridiculously high, impossible to achieve goals. Get as far as you can and do that. And feel the inflation of self that comes from that. It feels amazing when you know that you can go start a conversation with anybody. You can go up to that girl and it'll go well most of the time, or you can get that 11th rep off of yourself. And you'll still find a giant piece missing, which is what you're describing, which is, okay, you're a bigger YouTuber than almost anybody who's probably watching this right now. And you probably struggle more with YouTube than they do, right? And it's the same thing with me. Like, if I get 100,000 views on a video, that feels like crap. If Mr. Beast gets 10 million views on a video, that feels like crap. So there's this constant moving of the goalposts. And that is what I realized I don't want to play that game to the same degree anymore. I don't want to base my confidence on something that is just constantly forcing me to shoot more and more from a material achievement perspective. Hence the move towards that Eastern style of being confident.
Yeah, it's perspective is everything. Mm-hmm. So if I got Mr. Beast's worst numbers, I would be on cloud 9.
Right.
And the numbers I'm getting right now that I think are not that great would have been a dream for me a few years ago.
It's crazy.
So yeah, I guess some of the tricks you can do is to purposely lean into hard experiences. Mm-hmm. So you kind of dip your toes into the pain so that your baseline will get lower. And so then, 100,000 views will feel pretty good, or you'll just be like, oh, good. It's like that pleasure pain balance. If you push into the pain, you don't need to push so hard into pleasure to feel pleasure.
Yeah. And what I'm finding is that there's plenty of opportunities where things hurt me or my friends and we don't acknowledge it. And this is particularly true as men. So I'll just give you an example that happened last night. I was talking to a friend and he went to an event where someone who used to be his best friend was there, and they kind of had a new best friend. And he came back and he was talking about it. He was bothered, but he was like, it doesn't make sense for me to be bothered. It's like, it's been a long time. And this is, I can't really be mad. I can't really be this. I can't be. Meanwhile, you could feel that there's hurt, there's pain, there's grief, there's anger, all of these unfair, irrational things. And what I find when it comes to pain is you don't have to necessarily go find new pain. You have to acknowledge the pain that you're already experiencing, which is that situation hurts, right? It might make you angry at the friend. It might make you feel betrayed. It might make you feel grief for the loss and recognizing what could have been. All of these things we've been told are not okay to feel, but they are. They really, really are. And in terms of confidence, I think this comes together. When you have the confidence to allow yourself to experience whatever the heck you're experiencing, even if it's irrational or unfair. This doesn't mean that he goes to the friend and says, "You betrayed me." It just means that in his own space, he can feel angry. He can feel hurt. He can feel grief. I have found that doing that creates a tremendous degree of self-love, of self-acceptance, and now that I'm leaning into that actual pain that is alive for me, it's like I don't have to go, I don't know, chase pain anywhere else. It's like I just have to acknowledge the pain that is showing up in my life unbidden. And from that comes so much more joy, relaxation, gratitude. All of the most wonderful things tend to come right on the tail end of experiencing that pain.
There certainly is no shortage of pain, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm wondering, we've got a lot of big voices in the like self-help space now, especially to like young men. They're often getting led in interesting directions by maybe charlatans or false gurus.
Yep.
Or I'm just curious to get your opinion on like what have you noticed, and you've been in this space trying to help people become better, more charismatic for like a
Long
decade
time.
now.
Yeah.
How has the space changed, and like what do you think of these new teachers?
Well,
What-
it's the same thing, different story. It used to be Amazon FBA automation. Then there's this dream that the 24-year-old sells to the 21-year-old that you're gonna travel the world, go to the beach, work on your laptop, and that is totally doable. Though you don't want to work on the beach. That doesn't make any sense when you see a photo of that. That's just silly. But it's always going to be faster to rent a Lamborghini, to fake sales numbers, to do any of that. So that's been around for a decade. It's just sort of the offer changes in a very superficial way. And now I see it's like TikTok, faceless channel. I don't know what is going on today. The thing that has developed, I think, is when I started, there was no attention paid to male-female dynamics. Zero. So like acknowledging that you'd read the book The Game was taboo because you're not supposed to think about that. You were just supposed to understand women implicitly because you were now 17, 18 years old. And if you didn't, what the heck was wrong with you? There is way more attention that is paid to male-female dynamics to the degree that you have 12, 13-year-olds talking about alphas and betas and Andrew Tate stuff. I think that it is coming from a lens of pain and rejection. I think a lot of the guys that focus the most on male-female dynamics, and I put myself in there, although I don't think I've gone down this rabbit hole, do it because there was suffering in them growing up in those relationships. And then they figure out how to master those relationships, to cut themselves off, to figure out how to get what they want. And it is, in the case of taking Andrew Tate or somebody like that, it is often with a manipulative, controlling. If you take Andrew Tate, lie to them about their income when they're working with you as cam girls. Women are irrational and emotional, and you can control them through that, and you just be hyperlogical all the time. It's got this edge of pain and frustration that is then enacted on others. So I don't know any 13 or 14-year-olds. I don't know what's actually going on. I hear the conversation about them. But that is something that I see popping up constantly, is that people are very aware of the difficulties that men and women have with one another, and there is not a widely agreed upon solution that seems to be working for people.
Yeah, it seems like men and women are really polarizing, especially like politically and ideologically.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I never heard about any of this.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like, you'll see a commercial and it's clearly targeted towards this demographic. And then you'll get, I guess the messaging that we're getting is so different, probably because of social media. We're all in our own little tubes. We're in our own little tunnels.
Yeah.
And we're getting our own version of reality. And then when you pop your head up and see somebody in another tunnel, you're like, wow, we're in different worlds.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's definitely true. And I have to give credit because the Red Pill or Andrew Tate, I do think that they identify patterns that are occurring in men and women. And one of them is that with the rise of social media and dating apps, women are capable of entering the global dating pool, right? And that has a dramatic impact on the experience of young men and young women. It was always the case prior to social media that the 19-year-old girl was more wanted in her community than the 19-year-old guy. And you'd know this if you went to college. There was a ladies' night. They were invited to the cool frat party, and you were not until you were a senior, at which point you got to throw the party and like invite the sophomore to come to the party. That had always been the case, but it was like, okay, a senior and a sophomore or something like that. Like that was the degree of difference. Now it's like a sophomore and a billionaire with a yacht because they can connect via Instagram. And the senior who is at her college is not as attractive. And it's not gone full global dating market, but a significant portion of the market has, and things like OnlyFans for men, which is, okay, now you're going to pretend to have a girlfriend that is the most physically attractive person you've ever seen, who is going to pretend to be the most sexually available person that you've ever seen. That globalization with the reduced local contact, it seems to be having a really, I don't know, and let's just say, and a huge effect on things. We could talk about exactly what that effect is.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to get into this territory at all, but I find this topic really interesting, and I think AI girlfriends are here. And soon this like global dating marketplace is going to it's going to go off the rails. And I'm worried that a lot of guys might just check out if they can have the girl of their dreams in the palm of their hand at all times. They might never go outside.
Yeah. So this is tangentially related. I'll share with you. I just shot this video, and one of the things that I noticed, have you seen Jack Reacher or Reacher, the Amazon show?
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Okay. So what I comment on, it's now been 3 seasons, and I'm not a fan of the show, but I just happened to catch it. And then I checked back in the second season, saw the same thing occur in the second season, checked in the third season, saw the same thing. I was like, oh God, this is bad for men. And the thing that I saw was Alan Ritchson, who is huge. I mean, obviously on steroids, but is just like he plays the most physically capable man you could ever imagine. He's Conan the Barbarian. He's James Bond. He's like every male fantasy action hero ever. But there's one dramatic change. And it's that whereas James Bond would go seduce the girl, in all 3 seasons, the woman lead has to seduce Reacher. She has to like throw herself at him, take off her top and walk in on him while he's showering. And he is totally sexually passive. There is no active drive in him. And as I looked at some of the media today, there's been this shift from men who are initiating, risking rejection, putting themselves out there, to the new fantasy is, I will never have to put myself out there. She'll just come to me. And I think that speaks very much to what you were talking about, which is there is now an expectation, or at least a fantasy for men, that you will never have to risk rejection or any of that painful experience, that you can just have, if you're capable enough, the girl will just throw herself at you. Or in the age of AI, you won't have to face rejection because you'll be able to get the most, photorealistic, virtual reality, friendly, kind, never reject you girlfriend ever. And I think that that's clearly entered into the consciousness of our media and into our young men. And I've never heard so many young men say something like, I'm just not going to focus on dating for my 20s. Like, that didn't exist 10 years ago. But I hear all this monk mode stuff, and I think it's a reaction to some of the challenges that men face in dating, as well as the opportunity to find that gratification outside of human relationship.
Wow, that's a really interesting observation. Yeah, and I think people are really fixated on their status now because of social media.
Yeah.
And it's like what I said before with the menu and the food. People are hyper-focused on making an amazing menu, and they're forgetting about the food. They are renting the Lamborghini. They're doing everything to make their online social profile look so good that maybe they'll just get DMs that say, hey, take me now.
Well, I'm curious because I'm 37. And one of the things that is true in every generation is that old people decry the state of the youth, right? Oh my God, it's all falling apart.
Mean, you're 37. You could have fooled me. You're like the ageless wonder.
Thank you. But it's this part is definitely true, which is my parents and their parents before them. Oh, rock and roll is going to, corrupt all the children. Television, what will we do? Social media. So there's always this panic from adults when kids don't grow up the way that they did, that the fundamental way that humanity needs to interact no longer exists. And I'm curious, so let's say that AI girlfriends do happen. And every guy in the world, every incel now has the most attractive, lovely, amazing virtual girlfriend that you could ever hope to have. I'm curious, because I don't know the answer to this. Do you have a sense that what the problems would be with that concretely?
That's a great question. I mean, first, on the physical reality, we're having a birth rate crisis. I mean, there is not going to be biological humans if we don't reproduce. Pretty simple. And so we're already seeing the birth rate plummet globally. And this is an issue I've been really focused on. I've done several videos on it. And a lot of the issues that come from just the way we're socializing differently. People are valuing careers over family. But a lot of the issues are not things that we can choose consciously. They're chemicals in our water, in plastics, in our air that makes it so you literally can't reproduce. It's plummeting testosterone, plummeting sperm rates, miscarriage, infertility skyrocketing. So these are things that nobody would choose to really have. And so, yeah, I guess they're on the face of it, just the birth rate is one thing I think is an issue.
Yeah.
But other than that, I guess if you're not really concerned with the human race, nothing really, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't necessarily know the answer to that. I just saw that pattern in myself, which is, the kids aren't all right. And it's like, they'll be okay. Now, I don't know that is always going to be true, but there is certainly always a generational freak out about the kids. They're always doing something wrong.
Like, for instance, now we order from Uber Eats or Grubhub. The food's delivered right to our door. We barely have to walk 5 feet to grab it. And then we sit there and vegetate and eat it. And I think my parents were like, man, that's in my day, we used to have to go to the grocery store and actually buy the food.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, all right, maybe in a generation, are we going to have people like chew the food for us? And like, how far is this convenience going to get?
If you think about it, and our parents are like, well, I used to go to the grocery store. It's like, well, your grandparent used to hunt it himself. So what are you complaining about? And like his great grandparent had to fashion the bow himself. So there's this constant removal of humans from the evolutionary landscape in which we evolved. And the costs of that, I do see are you could call it the mental health crisis. There is, like, you take any animal far enough out of its natural environment, and misery will ensue, no matter how comfortable you make it. Like, you could deliver all the Uber Eats you want to a fish who doesn't get to swim in, take a Free Willy scenario where these orcas and these tiny little things, and they're well taken care of and they're well fed. But man, not having the ocean, those things get depressed, they get angry, they hurt their trainers. Like, when you take an animal out of the environment in which it's hardware evolved, bad things tend to happen. And so I am hopeful, I suppose, curious how we can reintegrate with some of that way that we evolved, while maintaining the fact that, like, that wasn't a walk in the park either. Like, disease, famine, tribal warfare, just like hardcore stratification of social hierarchy, where all of those are not things that I'm eager to experience in my own life. So I wonder, how to pull forward that grounded connection that you have when you're in your natural environment with some of the modern conveniences. I guess that's an exploration for my own life.
Yeah, it reminds me of a question I ask my followers often. I say, if you were a fish, would you rather be out in the open ocean on a reef, or would you want to be in a tank where you get fed every day, there's no predators?
Yeah.
And 99% of them are like, oh yeah, I'd want to be out in the open ocean. That's real life. Mm-hmm. But then I think that's when we use our conscious mind. We want to live out free, but often we don't operate on our conscious mind. 95% of our life is on the subconscious.
Yeah.
And, nobody wakes up in the morning and they're like, today I'm going to spend 9 hours on my phone. Nobody has that plan.
Yeah.
But that's just what happens when you live in this unconscious state. So I'm curious, like, how can we live in more of a conscious way, would you say?
Great question. Well, I'll get very specific. For me, psychedelics have helped a lot. Like, bringing, I think we've all seen that picture of the iceberg where it's got the 10% at the top and the 95%. And this is your mind, and only 10% of it is conscious. holy moly, I did not understand the depth of that. We are all so much more enormous than the stories that we tell ourselves. I could not possibly wax poetic enough, but this is what the great poets have been writing about since they've been writing and speaking poetry, is that we are far, far more than our conscious mind. I found that things like the facilitated safe use of psychedelics, which I would not broadly recommend if you have any issue, right? We're on the internet here. You have to be careful with this sorts of stuff. But I have gotten tremendous value from that. Breath work, there's something called holotropic breath work, which is these deep breaths that can take you into altered states where you encounter more of your own unconscious. And that can come up initially as some of those feelings that we described. So we have gotten so used to consciously, from our heads, pushing down our unconscious experience. So take my friend that I mentioned, for instance. Maybe he's feeling betrayed or angry or sad and in grief about the loss of a friendship. Starting from a young age, our parents go, well, don't cry. It's not a big deal. You'll make another friend. You can go back. And so we learn this externalized and then internalized superego, which says, I can't feel that. It's okay. It'll turn around. And we get very, very good at taking parts of ourselves that don't have to be unconscious. Like you don't need to have all of your emotions occur unconsciously, but we get very, very good at forcing them to be unconscious. So almost the first layer is just be like, look, let me take all the things that were optionally unconscious, that were survival strategies that my parents poured into me when I was a kid and my society poured into me, and let me make them conscious. And the way to access those, the best way I found is breath work, psychedelics, journaling, therapy. Those sorts of things are really, really valuable. Now, you might be asking, why would you want to do this? And the answer is, often one of the things that is most unconscious is the path to our deepest joy. Like you said, we wake up and we're on the phone. It's like, yeah, because we're unconscious of the thing that would bring us the most joy. If you were utterly conscious of the outcome of 9 hours of playing on your phone and the thing that would fill you up the most, it would not be, no social media site in the world could possibly hijack you. But we lack the awareness of where our true connection and joy is. And I find that in bringing all of the emotions, the grief, the ones we don't like, the anger, the path to joy becomes much more conscious, and it is therefore easier to go, I'm not interested in Instagram in the same way. I'm not interested in chasing that next promotion in the same way. I know what brings me joy.
Man, that is deep. Yeah, that's really well said. You made me think of Carl Jung and the shadow and
yeah, my guy.
The collective unconscious.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned because I've seen social media leaning more and more towards the unconscious. Maybe 5 years ago, I would go on YouTube and I'd be like, all right, what do I want to learn today? And there'd be all these, maybe this is just my algorithm. I don't know.
You're right.
But there's so many educational videos, awesome music, nature videos. And now it's like my feed is just so sensational and over the top, and everything's like a reaction to a reaction to a reaction. There's very little like original thinking and deep research happening. It's just a lot of noise, it feels like.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like I need to compete in that arena because a lot of the stuff I make is very educational, but it's hard to compete with these really like crazy Mr. Beast videos.
Sure.
In this landscape. I think you do such a good job though of that combination of, oh wait, this looks cool, let me click on it. But then you get something out of the video. That's what I love about your channel.
Thank you. I really struggle with the same thing, just so you know, that it's gotten extremely hard in recent years because it was organic at first. I was genuinely very interested in the Game of Thrones cast and why everybody liked them and talking about the things that they did. But then I outgrew that, and my audience was still like, more, we want more. And so I've fallen into, at times, creating from not a place of inspiration, but from sequel. And that is what I found is the period where my business was making the most money was not connected to the periods where I felt the most creatively inspired and joyous. And one of the little things that has to happen, the big thing that has to happen, is you have to follow your own guidance and not the guidance of the YouTube algorithm. But a simple thing for you is that YouTube studio page that tells you if your videos are 1 of 10 or 2 of 10 or 3 of 10 is poison. It's poison. It is their agenda for you that is thrown in your face every time you try to enter a creative zone. the most fulfilling times of my life are when I am answering a question to which I cannot find the answer. And I'm doing it for myself. And then I share with other people. Where I try to reverse engineer, oh, this is really popular. And what's the title? Let me really think about this a lot. And then I make the video. It could get 10 million views and I could make a lot of money, and that's nice, but there's a piece of me is lost and is left behind. And that's actually what led to me stepping away for so long, was I had done that enough times that I had hollowed out the creative core of my process. And I didn't understand what was happening. I was like, everything is so good. It was like, oh, I'm unconscious of why I actually give a shit about this. And it's not for more subscribers and it's not for more money. It's because what I want to spend my life doing is focusing on my most acute problems, solving them for myself, and then helping someone else move through that problem more gracefully. And when I do that, it's like 10,000 views, 50,000 views. I don't care. Like that's when I'm alive. And I believe, though I'm working on this belief, that if I do that, I will be provided for. Like I will forever be able to help other people. They will forever be able to exchange resources, money, goods with me, and I will be taken care of. But when I'm like, ooh, how do I get to more millions and more millions? That's when that's where I've suffered tremendously.
Yeah, those really sensational videos, they might capture your attention initially, but in 5 years, are people going to be returning to them?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
Yeah, I just did a video. I've been struggling with sleep lately. And so I was like, I want to learn everything there is about sleep. And so I did this massive 36-minute animation in a completely new style of animation that took a while to learn. And it didn't get viewed by many people, probably because I released it early in the morning. And people were like, all right, I should have released it at night. But yeah, it was one of my worst performing videos and it took the most work. But I'm at peace with it. I'm like, this is an amazing video and maybe over time it'll do well. But I learned a ton making that video, both technically and about the science of sleep. So I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love to play games. Where I'm most myself is when I play a game or set up the game such that I win just by playing, right? So if the game is make the video that is most impactful to you and then share it. It's like, well, I win. As soon as I start engaging in that process, I win. And then, of course, I want to title it or thumbnail it in a way that gives it the most reach and can impact the most people and can drive more AdSense or course sales. That would be wonderful. But man, I have missed that path at times, and I have succeeded at a high level without winning to start. And there is nothing so demoralizing as trying to please an entire audience with the video and then it does bad. That's just like, oh my God, like I sold myself out in the process of making this video and then it didn't even give me the payback. I don't want to do that anymore.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it made me think of people pleasing.
Oh yeah.
Is people pleasing something that we should be very cautious of doing?
Well, it is far more common in most people than they realize. I'll speak for myself, is far more common in me than I realized. I thought that I was someone, because I was sort of iconoclastic and left my job and didn't do what people expected me to do. I thought that I didn't have a people-pleasing streak, but I just had a particular kind of it, which was I would select the people that I had to please, like, unconsciously, and then work very hard to make sure that they did not think that I was bad, that thought that I was generous, all of these sorts of things. And it's okay to not be conscious of people pleasing, because what will happen is you will start to enter into intense resentment and pain. And so what happened with me is I didn't know why, but I had a people pleasing relationship. And I think he did with me in the inverse with my co-founder. And rather than have frank conversations about my frustrations in the business, which I was unconscious of, or my desire to be more supported, which it didn't seem that he was capable of supporting me in the way that I wanted to be supported. I just said, oh, it's fine. We're making so much money. It doesn't matter. I get to do this with my friend. This is awesome. And I genuinely felt that way. It took many years before the dam sort of broke. And when it did, it was like years of frustration and resentment that I hadn't expressed and I hadn't nipped in the bud that came up. And that had a huge effect. I didn't handle it as neatly as I wish that I could have, because again, when a dam breaks, it's not a pretty thing. It's like when you have a little bit of flow, you can work that through and manage it. But a dam is a lot of stuff coming at you. And so it would be great to be aware of people pleasing. Hopefully this conversation has inspired people to think about the ways in which they do not show up with their frustration, their anger, and their pain in their most cherished relationships because they think the relationship can't withstand it. Because if you don't do that, you're just taking that credit card debt out that I spoke about earlier. And years down the line, you will be forced to pay. You can or maybe you'll get to the end of your life, you'll just have a chronic heart condition and a tremendous amount of stress. But you're going to pay the bill one way or the other. So I prefer these days to pay it consciously and on time when there are little moments of ruptures in my relationship or little frustrations. I try to do that stuff consistently these days.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it reminds me of the quote from Sigmund Freud: unexpressed emotions will always pop themselves up in uglier ways later.
Yep.
And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about free will. And anytime you're not able to like authentically express your free will, you will have to express that free will in other ways later.
Yeah.
Even if that means hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So an example I use all the time is like somebody that works a job that they hate. They're not using their own free will all day. And then they get off work and they have to go F themselves up and drink themselves into a stupor.
Yep.
They have to use their free will to hurt themselves just to show themselves, I have free will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So suppressed free will, suppressed emotions are very dangerous.
Yeah, it's the old cliche of kicking the dog. It's like, well, why does somebody kick the dog? Well, the dog could be the waiter. The dog could be your own child. It's like you take abuse and don't stand up for yourself in that moment, essentially because you're afraid of the conflict. You're afraid of the consequences of it. And then you take that rage, which hasn't been appropriately expressed at the person who is crossing your boundary, and you direct it at someone weaker. And then that transmission of abuse happens like that when you're not able to, when you're people pleasing, when you're trying to manipulate a situation rather than show up as you are, which is fucking furious that your boss is berating you or treating you like that and risking getting fired, which again looks like a bad thing in the short term, but it could be a wonderful thing if that was what's actually happening. The problem occurs when you have a boss who is just critiquing you, but you receive it as your father from 20 years ago who berated you, and then you scream at your boss and then you get fired. It's about allowing emotions to emerge appropriately to the context that they're in and not dragging that past baggage to a situation so that you're able to be like, okay, this is for my boss, this is for my wife, this is for my dad, this is for me privately. But I think all of that gets very screwed up as we basically take everything that happened in our childhoods and just spray it around all the people in our lives in our adulthood.
Yeah, you just did such an amazing video. I just watched it on Malcolm Gladwell and Douglas Murray. They had a debate, and Malcolm Gladwell had all this suppressed emotion from his childhood about racism and things like that. And when he saw Douglas Murray, who was like just a white guy, he projected all that onto him. And he thought, this guy's this evil, terrible, racist person. And so he assumed all these horrible things about him. And he went into that conversation or debate with no charity at all. Yeah. And it totally backfired. And the whole crowd saw him as a very disingenuous kind of, he didn't have the best intentions there.
Mm-hmm. I think it was that Douglas Murray was anti-immigration, and Gladwell connected that with the experience of his mother. And he says this directly in the podcast after, who was told that she oughtn't be in England because she was, I believe, Jamaican. And so he says in his own words, I came in thinking this guy was a piece of shit. And the disdain drips off him for the entire time. And the audience, which isn't in on his backstory, is literally watching this debate unfold. And at first they laugh at the first kind of sideways joke, and then they're like, ha ha ha. And then by the end, they're just like, ooh. And so what happened is in this video and in the original debate, people voted on who won the debate. And it was one of the largest swings in their history of these debates, where he lost like 20 points or 19 points of audience favor, not necessarily because his side couldn't have won the argument, but because the way in which he behaved and engaged with it was so alienating that people are just like, all right, I can't do this any longer. And yeah, it makes us behave irrationally. We bring guns to fights that don't need them. We all sorts of coping mechanisms arise in situations where they aren't needed. So if you can process that stuff, like I mentioned, in breath work, in therapy, you can bring that unconscious hurt, that stuff from your past up, address it. You can then go into every situation, whether it's a debate, a conversation with your boss, a conversation with your wife or your kid, and you're actually addressing what is present and there, and you will be so much more effective. It's like you're doing one job instead of 20 years of jobs at a time.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a funny example in my own life. I used to train martial arts, and I got injured and wasn't able to do it anymore. And so I was watching a UFC fight with my friend, and there were two women fighting. And he doesn't train fighting at all. And he's like, oh, I could beat them up.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, do you realize that they train every single day and they're both black belts and they would destroy you? He's like, no, I could beat them up. I'm like, you have zero training. How do you? And I actually got really mad at him. We had this he's like, man, calm down. I was like, you're insane. Like, who do you think you are? And then I realized that I was getting mad because I got injured and that it was really coming from my own personal feelings about not being able to train martial arts anymore.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, you know what? That's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But,
it's beautiful awareness.
Yeah.
And so what happens, that's a great example, because we can take the content of something and mix and confuse it with the charge that we have. So the content, I would probably agree with you, is like, there's an opportunity for you to be like, dude, no, you wouldn't. These girls would kill you. But the charge that gets placed on top of that is from the past. And so I'm not saying when you process your emotions that you're going to feel totally differently in every situation or that your opinions will change, but you will address them with less inappropriate charge for the moment. And that will actually make you more effective. Like, you'll be able to communicate your point because the other person will sense that you're like laughing with / at him. Like, dude, these girls would choke you out in 0.5 seconds. It would not be funny. That would be far more of effective and of communication. And, ultimately you did see it, which is this happens all the time in people. So there's no shame in that.
So when you do get triggered, what would you recommend people do when they feel that emotion, their blood boiling?
Yeah. Well, if you notice a trigger, you've won. GG's. Like, it's like amazing. The problem is that you don't notice that you're triggered. You're utterly certain. First off, you space out. Usually you enter into a dissociated state. Now you're yelling at the waiter and you're certain that they deserve it. You're certain that this is because of what your friend said. The hardest thing in the world is to recognize that you are in a triggered state. When you do that, just taking a little bit of space, going to the bathroom for a moment, splashing water on your face, like just giving yourself some space to take a few deep breaths and calm down, focus your attention on the center of your body, your heart, your gut, come back down into your body. And what you might find, which is so strange for people because they consider themselves such logical, rational creatures, is that you're carrying a tremendous amount of charge in you. Like, you might even be like shaking in that moment not because your friend said that he could beat up a girl, but because that situation took you back to a really intense emotional experience in your life that hasn't fully moved through you, hasn't been processed, and it's coming up to be felt and to be processed. So the hardest, it's not what to do when you're triggered, it's how do you notice these triggers. And it can be very, very hard. I'll just be honest. It's very, very hard to do in real time. So one of the things that I've appreciated is the friends around me where we can give each other space and grace and notice and trust one another to be like, I think you're a little triggered right now. And when that is said, it's like, okay, let me check, right? Let me slow down and check, because it can be tough to pull yourself out of it.
That might be the most triggering thing you can say to somebody. I think you're a little triggered right now. That's gonna send them off.
That's a true. So what we've had to do is have conversations separately, genuinely being like, can you let me know I trust you with this? Please don't dump your crap on me. And when I'm making a point and you're triggered, escape it by pointing it on me. So that it requires a tremendous amount of trust. But in setting that up in advance, it's been really, really helpful for relationships.
And like you said right there, there's a tremendous amount of energy with those triggers. And I think you can direct that for good if you have that awareness. Like, I think probably some of the best music, the best art, the best creations come out of that pain. And then if you redirect it, you can make a beautiful song about heartbreak. All the best songs are about tragic things that have happened and the best art. So yeah, I think it's a really powerful force back to Carl Jung in the shadow, like if you can, he said that everything that irritates us about others leads to a better understanding of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, if you can take those triggers as clues, maybe I can dig into my subconscious and pull some treasure out.
Yeah.
You know, the subconscious is a great analogy for it is the ocean. And often it's used in movies and in art. The ocean represents the subconscious. And we're scared of the subconscious because there's a lot of monsters that lurk down there. But there's also treasure. So, you know, there's a great amount of curiosity and reward that you can get from digging down there.
Totally. If you look at a lot of UFC fighters, right? Like there's issues and aggression that has been funneled and channeled through their bodies into their fists, into other, right? That there's a driving force there. It could be processed a bit more. When you look at the great artists, these are the people that feel intensely. The stories that most shock me, and I've experienced this a handful of times in my own art form with YouTube videos, but the way that Let It Be, do you know how Let It Be got written by Paul McCartney?
Mm-mm.
He had a dream that his mother Mary came to him. He was having a hard time, and she said, "It's okay, just let it be." And he woke up, and in just a few minutes, he wrote Let It Be. And there are many stories of musicians and authors who are composing some of their greatest works in no time flat based on intuitive experiences, dreams, emotions, all this kind of stuff. And they'll sit and go to the studio and work, but then it'll just pour out of them because they've tapped into an emotion. And so it's the treasures that are there, just like you said, when you can take this stuff and pour it into your art form of choice, magic happens there. And the art form can be fighting, it can be drawing, it can be singing, it can be painting, it can be speaking. So finding the thing that is most comfortable for you to channel your emotions into is one of the most miraculous and wonderful things you can do for yourself, because it allows you not to have to repress it, nor to have it just build up and make you feel like crap. It allows you to transmute it into something helpful and beautiful and potentially that pays your bills, which is really nice.
Yeah, you're reminding me of actual brainwave scans of people when they're in deep sleep. Their brainwaves are really slow, and then when they're in REM sleep, they're a little bit faster, but they're almost awake, but they're still in this, like, you know, they're in this dream. And then when they're in like an extremely alert state, their brainwaves are like super fast. But if you look at a flow state is like perfectly in between a dream and being awake. It's almost like your thinking brain is out of the way.
Yeah.
And you can't overthink anything. And you're finally just free to just take what you had from your subconscious and then create with it without all that alertness in the way.
One of the hard things that people do, people think stress is a complicated topic, but I see a lot of people try to work creatively from a position of stress. It's very, very hard to do the thing on the deadline in the way that the audience wants, with the belief that it's do or die, your life depends on it. In order to create enough space to get to that, I'm relaxed enough to be in between dream and awake, I'm in flow. There does need to be an allowing of oneself to have more space and time and creativity, and to go, you know what, this one the audience doesn't have to love with this one. And that's where I am at this stage of my business. Is I did not sit down and think, what's the best way for me to build a 7 million subscriber YouTube channel? That was never the plan. It was truly, God, these guys are so charismatic. I'm just going to look at what they're doing. Like, what's Bill Clinton up to? What's these guys up to? How did he have this conversation? And then I put them on YouTube because it was just like, cool. I didn't look at my first video for 6 months. I came back, it had 100,000 views. I was like, what is going on here? That creative process could not have been constructed logically. I could not have invented the charisma breakdown, which didn't exist on YouTube at the time, in the way that I did it by thinking my way through it. It was it arose organically from my interests, my curiosities, my solving of my own problems, and my sharing of my results with other people. If you do that process, incredible things happen. And those are the people, those are the guys that I most admire, are the ones whose careers emerge organically rather than by 10-year plan. That's just never been my way personally.
Yeah, I think our culture has an extreme thirst for authenticity now. And
Hmm.
if you look at all the biggest, most sustainable YouTubers and podcasts, it's just kind of a guy talking trash in his
Hmm.
backyard. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a script. And I mean, even in our politics, I think that authenticity is just destroying inauthenticity. We look at our last election, and one candidate was extremely scripted,
Yeah.
establishment. She could not deviate from the script at all, or else she'd be destroyed by her own team.
Hmm.
And then we had a character, say what you want about him. He was an honest liar, like Dave Chappelle
Hmm.
said. He was up to no good, but he was like, "Yeah, I'm up to no good.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't pay taxes. Who would pay taxes?"
Hmm.
Um, and that was really refreshing. And yeah, I think he's tapped into this balance of just he can move freely and say whatever he wants now, and he's not beholden to this script or this establishment. So
Yeah. I've thought a lot about that honest liar thing, because I suspect it seems obvious. Well, let me just guess. I think Donald Trump tells more lies than Kamala Harris does. But of course he does. That's almost a who he is thing, right? It's that honest liar
but he's like,
aspect,
yeah, I
which
lie. Who cares?
yeah,
Yeah.
or even I no, I don't lie. I'm the greatest. I never lie. It's like even the way, and it's not there is a clarity when you're engaging with Donald Trump to a degree, versus there appeared to be a manipulative aspect, and I understand, like a cognitively top down thinking through process. Perhaps that's what it is. Donald Trump's lies emerge organically. they come they come from the unconscious and just rise up, and he just says shit. There's a sense that Kamala's came from a committee, that they all got together and banded together and thought what would be the good way to spin this. And it's interesting because it's not how far off of the truth is each of these candidates. It's where did this come from? And because I think it emerges from like, this is his ocean, man. This is how he's going to be, is widely forgiven. And hers, like it doesn't take much for people to go, oh, that's a lie. How dare she? Because she sort of took the veil of honesty. And so I haven't cracked this one entirely. I've thought about making this video a lot.
Yeah.
How do I explain this? But that I think there is something to that honest liar description.
Yeah, I was looking to your channel. I was like waiting for that video breakdown. I was
I
like, when's that
haven't
going to
figured
come?
it out yet. I
Yeah.
haven't figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what is the draw of Donald Trump? Like, why is he? I mean, would you define him as a charismatic person?
Yeah, generationally.
Yeah.
There's what is oh my gosh, who else could be?
Yeah.
Like who else? Let's just look at what happened. This is the video I want to make because he is a phenom. You can hate him, and he is a phenom. The Republican Party fought him tooth and nail. He came in and ripped power out of their hands. I don't know if you remember the first debate where he's in the middle of the stage and they say, raise your hand if you cannot pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. And 12 people keep their hands down, and Donald Trump raises his hands while the audience boos him. How dare you? But by the end of the third debate, I think he was in first place. About issues that nobody cared about, China and the border and like all of this stuff and political correctness. Nobody had even heard that word at the time. So, and watching him fend off these attacks, like you're mean to women, and he responds with the Rosie O'Donnell quip. Eventually I'll make this video. I've been thinking a lot about it, but he's generationally charismatic. There's no question about it. I think partially there's a number of things that I think contribute to it. The one that I can't overlook is he faced barely any serious competition. The way that the Democrats ran 3 elections was essentially, we're not Donald Trump, so vote for us. And they won once, which is pretty impressive to have no platform other than we're not that guy.
Yeah.
So he didn't have stem competition. I think a Barack Obama would have crushed him. I think he would have been smashed by a charismatic Democrat. The other thing I think is that he is, Carl Jung's got this collective unconscious idea, and then it's what is collectively repressed will emerge in a nastier sort of way. I think he is the reemergence of the repressed power in the American psyche. You could say, like, I don't think it's uniquely the white American male psyche, but there is this American guilt of colonialism and wealth, and we got to play nice with everybody because we've been so bad for so long. And it is most intensely directed, you could say, at straight white men, but it exists throughout America. And I think he is the return of the repressed power drive, where it's the Democrats are running on like, it's her turn, and I'm going to elect Joe Biden says flatly in 2020, I'm going to pick a female vice president. And then they had to run her against Donald Trump rather than going with, I'm going to pick the most qualified vice president. So I think Donald Trump represents a return of that repressed power drive, because power was made bad. And I don't think power is bad. I think that his willingness to break things has a light aspect to it. There's a shadow aspect to it as well, which is, I don't give a damn. But the Democrats, we can't upset people. We have to take the smallest minorities scream and attend to it. Who's the loudest voice? It's this, one of the things that I also think is present in there, and this is, my armchair philosophizing, is that I think that the Republicans represented masculinity in its light and its shadow, and I think the Democrats represented femininity in its light and its shadow. And it's not that one is better than the other, but we had a swing towards femininity in its light and its shadow for a long time. And people were like, we're done with this. We're going to go for the whole masculine light shadow package, which I don't think is the answer. I think the answer is you want the light masculine and the light feminine combined. You want compassion and power together. But that was not on the ballot.
Yeah, in politics, it seems like we're swinging back and forth between the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine. And
yes,
I'm curious to see what happens, because the pendulum never stops in a balance point. It's always got to keep on going. But you just mentioned that you don't think power is bad. And oftentimes we hear that the desire for power is this very evil urge in us. Like, how is I'd love it if you could say more about that. How is power not bad?
Oh, this is the essence of the people pleaser, is that power is bad. And I'll take a step back. I think that, since we're talking about femininity and masculinity, I think Robert Glover got it right in his book No More Mr. Nice Guy, where he talks about since the Industrial Revolution, men have left the child-rearing spaces. We've lost that masculine initiation that would occur where boys would go out with their fathers and hunt and be removed from the world of women. Instead, what happens is, naturally, like, you're born to a woman, she takes care of you, she breastfeeds you, but then it's all your elementary school teachers are women. There's like, I remember the one male phys ed teacher that I had, but if I look at my childhood, it was all women, and there was never an initiation into a masculine world. And the light of women is this intense empathetic connection, like the ability to just utterly love and care for a helpless infant that provides nothing, right? And just love it. The shadow is to then have that infant become 13 and not let go of the infancy in them. This Jordan Peterson talks about
the devouring
this, right?
mother, right?
The devouring mother,
yes,
who cannot let go. And that is, I think, what has happened culturally, is that we have men and women who are afraid. And what has to happen, the male gift in that 13, 10, whatever, initiation into manhood, is that you are separate. You are not like everybody. Not everyone is invited on the hunt. Only those who contribute to the hunt are invited on the hunt. And if they cry and if their feelings are hurt, no matter. We move, because this is too important, too dangerous, and it is actually a loving act to not include everyone, right? Not like to ignore the feelings, because, okay, he gets to come on a hunt, then he gets eaten by the fucking tiger, and then he gets eaten by the tiger. So there's this ability to form a boundary against that empathetic connection that is total for a mother and her infant, that has not been established. And power, this is what I didn't have in my business, that I fucked up. I was the empathetic mother in my business that was just being so kind to all the employees, and everybody gets a bonus, and then I got a lot of money stolen from me, because this is what happens when you do this. I didn't have boundaries, and I think men and people today, not just men, women, do not know how to lovingly say, I see that you're hurt. I see that you're sad. I have compassion for that, and I am not going to include you in this company all the same. I am not going to invite you to this party all the same. I am not going to allow my need to fix you to override the mission or purpose of this thing. And I think that's been missing for a long time. And so the critique, if you look at what Doge is doing, cutting out US aid, is like it's the full repressed version of that. Like, we don't give a fuck. We're not paying for anybody. I don't care if you got HIV or AIDS. You're done. Like but there has been an illness. It's not compassion. It's like over connection and over sickness and over involving oneself in the problems of the other, to the degree that the strength that generates your ability to protect others has been compromised. Like the strength of the American economy and the strength of all of these things is being compromised. And so I think, like you said, we've pendulumed too far. I would have handled it differently, but we did need somebody who could essentially come in and be like, we're cutting this off. We're cutting this off. We're cutting this off. People are going to be sad. They're going to be hurt. They're going to be upset. I can move on anyways. And Donald Trump has that, man. He does not. He moves and upsets people. Let's put it that way.
That's very well said. And you made me think of like universities. I've worked at a university for many, many years, and I've seen how the inner workings, it's a very feminine field. Probably 90% of the administration's feminine, maybe 99%. It's almost all female. And it's very much to that energy of like, let's cater towards every student, no student left behind. We need to be very attuned to suffering. We don't tolerate any suffering. And everybody there is very agreeable. And what I've noticed is you'll have 100 agreeable people in a room, and then you'll have one very narcissistic person take charge of that room and kind of weaponize guilt and shame and make people, if they don't go along with what they're saying, they make them feel horrible. And they use this weaponization to accumulate power for themselves. And I've seen it many times where this one person will just take over the whole room, and everybody kind of goes along with it. And I don't say anything because it's like game theory. If I say anything, what's the upside for me? Nothing. So I just stay quiet. But I've observed this many times where that environment is just ripe for the taking.
Power doesn't go away because you repress it. It comes up unconsciously, and it is wielded unconsciously by people who are unconscious of their wielding of it. What you want are people who consciously wield the sword, who consciously say we are doing this and not this, not people who, under the mantle of consideration and care, are ruthless power brokers. And you see this in all sorts of cult activity, like, we're for everybody, and then it's inevitably like some orgy sex thing for the guy running it. But yeah, it is that culturally is just missing, that ability to consciously wield power and look someone in the eye and say, I am going to make this decision that upsets you. It does not mean I don't love you, nor does it mean that I will cater to you. And this is what I'm going to do, and allow for them to direct their anger at you. Right? This is the thing. And I think this is what a lot of young men never did with their mothers, is like, I am not going to listen to you. I love you. I am going to do it this way, and to allow her to be fearful, scared, terrified. And the father is the one who is supposed to assist in that when he takes his kid on the hunt. And she's terrified and she doesn't want to let him go. And so the gift of the mother is connection, and the gift of the father is independence. And both of these are required for a functioning human being, man or woman. But I do think that we've tread into pathological connection, which leads to pathological independence, right? Like you're unable to be compassionate and clear with people. You just have to be outwardly considerate of everybody while secretively advancing your own selfish needs.
That's a great observation, because I've noticed that on the surface, we have to act like this extremely moral person that is that cares about the suffering of everybody. But then in our own personal actions, we're kind of like, I'm just going to get mine, and I'm going to look out for myself. And it's this extreme imbalance on both the private and the public life, virtue signaling. Yeah.
No, I'm very fascinated. It's been a personal journey for me to recognize, oh my gosh, I did and this for a very, very long time. I had this manipulative, highly empathetic, connected way of avoiding people being angry with me, which was actually a power game to control how they felt about me, right? To so that they wouldn't be mad, so that they wouldn't say that I was a bad guy, so that they wouldn't say or do or think things that I didn't want them to think, which allows you to be controlled by the most narcissistic, lack of empathetic person in the room. And that's what always happens, is that the person that actually lacks empathy winds up running things from the shadows.
Have you seen Sopranos?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. I don't want to ruin anything for you, but Tony Soprano.
It's been a long time.
He is probably one of the most charismatic TV show characters ever. He's just like, it's addicting to watch him.
Okay.
And one thing he does is when he gives people information, he comes at them extremely aggressive and he rips their head off. And he's just so over the top, just direct and ruthless. But then he always ends each interaction in a very like kind, loving way. He like picks them back up. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you deliver maybe bad news in a way that doesn't get the person feeling like you're mean?
Well, Tony Soprano, what you're describing is almost what an abuser does, which is they rip you down at the beginning and then they fix you. So the essential thing here is going to be, you cannot make not upsetting the other person your primary aim. There needs to be a value that is first, and that first value ought to be the honest expression of yourself. The good news is you are fundamentally, and this can come off sideways if it hasn't been fully processed, but you're fundamentally good. Like when you have news to share, that someone is fired, that you don't like the way that they did something, that you'd like them to adjust, you're good. There's a good place that is coming from. It is coming from a place of love, even if it contains anger and frustration and all of these things. So rather than try to make them not be upset with you, the goal should be to tap into as much of your honest essence as you can. And what that would include usually is a boundary as well as a wish as well as compassion. So can you give me an example, and I can try to hone in on like what this could look like concretely?
Oh man. I guess the first example I can think of is a lot of people ask me to help them in certain ways. They say, hey, can you draw me this image, or can I have access to this? And I have my own little method of saying no, but I've tried to work on saying no and not people pleasing, but I have to get better at saying no, but then let them down gently if I can, not just being a dick.
This is a really good one. I've struggled with this, and I actually saw, I wish I had the text of it, Alex Hormozy do this really well. So I maybe we could find it after. Simon Squibb, who's the guy who goes around asking people about their dreams, reached out to Alex to like do a podcast. And the way that Alex wrote him back was so honest and so frank, but so but direct. It was just like, hey man, I don't remember what it was exactly. This is a no for me. You know, I forget what he said, but it was true and clear and valuable, and he didn't avoid it. In the past, I've done the people-pleasy thing, which is refer people to policies, which is like in avoiding saying no. It's like, oh, I don't do that, you know, as like a broad thing, which is to avoid the direct statement of no. And that's had a cost, which is I've missed out on a lot of opportunities by having a blanket policy of no, because I wasn't comfortable just saying, this is a no. This particular one is a no for me. So anyway, my assistants have to handle a lot of this today, but concretely, it would look like sitting down and from your heart finding the truth. And the first ones are going to take longer and they're going to be slower because it's a process of really finding where you are. But it might look something like, hey, name, what's the truth? I'm flattered that you would ask me for this. My mission is focused on X, Y, and Z. Like, this is what I'm about. So I'm going to decline this offer. I wish you the best. You know what I mean? Like, just
like sandwich it in between two positive things.
Yeah. Well, and make sure that the positive things are true. The mistake that I have done in the past is being friendly with my words, but not having it emerge from my essence. And I think really tapping in and being like, well, what do I genuinely feel about this person? And if it's like, I feel pissed and frustrated, it's like, okay, maybe chill out. You don't need to write back right now. But to find like, oh, that is nice of them. And I do appreciate the this, like say the real thing. Don't just say the polite, nice thing. But there's so much politeness, and I think this contributes to nice guy stuff, which has you pay back in other areas.
Yeah. Why do nice guys finish last? Why is there that trope?
uh, Nice guys finish last because they put themselves last, right? There's no
Mm.
other way for them to finish. They finish last because their primary way of moving through the world is trying to avoid other people having particular thoughts and ideas about them. I don't want them to think that I'm selfish. I don't want them to think that I'm mean. I don't want them to think that I just want them for sex. I don't want them to think. I don't want them to think. I don't want them to think. Now, the problem is they do have some of these shadow drives. They might just want that woman for sex. They might just want this thing. They might just. So what they do is they fake upfront what they want. They hide from themselves the behavior. They don't generally wind up getting the thing that they want. But if they do, they get it in a manipulative way that makes the person who gave it to them furious with them eventually. Instead of, it's like, oh, these assholes get all these women, they don't even care. It's like, yeah, they're clear. There's a clarity of just like, I'm looking for casual and I'm not treating this seriously like a committed relationship. I'm not saying that one needs to direct oneself in that way, but if one feels that, to allow that to come through is actually a more effective strategy. Now, what will also happen is the asshole, as you might call it, but it doesn't require an asshole, will experience, because there's more direct revealing of oneself, that person will experience more direct rejections in one's life. The person who puts oneself out there more is not going to get the job all the time. They're not going to get every girl. Not every person is going to like them. They're going to like bother more, but they're going to quickly sort the jobs, friends, and girlfriends into the categories of the ones that actually want to associate with them as they actually are. And the nice guy, even when he gets the job or the friend or the girlfriend, has led with a mask. And that mask takes energy to maintain. So even if you get the dream thing, you're exerting so much energy to maintain it and control the image that it's an inner drain, even if you have all the external things coming your way. So it's a painful experience. It's generally unconscious. If it interests you, the topic, definitely check out No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. But I did, I read it 10 years ago. I was like, this isn't me. And then I read it 2 years ago. I was like, oh my God, I wish I'd been able to take this on board at the time.
So I think people gravitate to the opposite end of the spectrum where they say, okay, mean guys get what they want. They get the girl, they get the money, the car. So then they try to signal that they're a mean guy.
Mm.
And I guess I'm curious to know, like, what is the healthy balance, or like, how do, being mean clearly isn't the way to go, right?
No, not at all. It's being yourself, which is the hard thing. The nice guy is an identity. The asshole is an identity. These are all like practiced behaviors. And again, I started with this. It is very normal in one's teenage years to try to be a goth and try to be a jock and then try to be like you're trying on different personas. That extends through one's 20s in my experience, where I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an athlete. You're working out the identities that click most with you. But what you're checking is how well these identities get you what they want, but also how comfortably they align with who you genuinely are. And so rather than be a nice guy or a mean guy, what you want to begin to train is the ability to take your consciousness out of your head and into your body, into your heart, into your gut, into those places where you will find out who you really are. And you might think in your head, I've never done that. I would never do that to someone. And then in your gut, you're like, oh my God, I would rip that guy's head off. I would kill him. And this doesn't mean that you're going to kill someone in your lifetime, but you encounter a more raw, unfiltered expression of your wants, needs, and desires. And by sitting in that, working with them, feeling those all the way through, you learn how to relate to them without repressing them. And so you can take that, I would fucking kill that guy energy and yell it out, scream it out, whatever, and get the clarity of like, oh, dude, that guy's fired. And then when you fire him, and I just have gone through this process, the email is, hey, this isn't working out. There was a huge mistake that was made. I appreciate the time at the company. There were things that I really enjoyed, but this is just no longer the case. Like, then you're able to communicate clearly without taking on the other person's burden. All good things start to flow from this feeling one's mean emotions, as we call them. It doesn't mean that you take the unprocessed emotion and put it in the email. It means that you take the time privately to filter, to sort and process the emotion, and then you can communicate with clarity, assertiveness, all the things that you would want, confidence, all of that comes.
Wow, you just gave me clarity on some situations that I'm dealing with, and
Great.
I'm gonna have to rewatch this section, and I think you just made the answer very clear for me. But this conversation keeps coming back to Carl Jung in my mind. And
In
I
my
like
mind too, I love him so much. He's the best.
totally. And I like what you said about trying on the many hats as you get older.
Hmm.
That seems to be something that we should do when we're young. And Carl Jung talks about this. Like the first half of life is about the external world. You're meant to go out, and when you're born, you're nothing. You're all potential, but you're nothing. And the first half of your life is about becoming higher resolution. You got to build yourself up and take on apprenticeships and learn skills and become capable. And then the second half of life is about going inward and rediscovering that child you left behind.
Yeah.
And, you got to rediscover that zest for life, the imagination that you left behind. And I think people have a midlife crisis when they've strayed very far away from their authentic dreams. And let's say they did a job that they actually hated, and then they looked at their first half of their life as a complete waste of time. I think looking inward is going to be very painful, and it's a big transition. So I think our culture is having an issue because a lot of children aren't able to play their roles out and experiment with identities in a playful way. Now it's like, oh, you say you're this identity? Oh, let's affirm you. That's a big conversation, but I think that a lot of this is from repressed play.
Huh. Yeah, the ability to not have to concretely define. It's interesting because some of the philosophy behind trans or all of this stuff is the fluidity of identity. But in a way, we're concretizing that identity so quickly instead of allowing it to be playfully explored.
It's a paradox.
It's
it's this fluid thing, but then you're trying to concrete it.
Yeah. Instead of being like, let's hold off on the concretization, play with it as much as you want.
Sure.
Sort it through. Interesting. I don't think about it as much because I don't have children, so it's not present. But I do think that, allowing that testing ground for different things. Am I a jock? Am I this? Am I that? What, it seems important.
So I had a question that I was thinking about. You talk about making good first impressions a lot. And I wanted to take that question one step further. And how do you make a good impression on somebody that has a much higher status than you?
Okay. So as with everything I've said, I've tried to focus less on making anyone feel anything about me these days. But I have talked about this in the past, and there are tactics that you can use to do it. The most important thing with someone who is high status is that people will enter into that people pleaser mode, and they will start to kiss butt, and they will assume the role of fan or groupie. And it's very uncomfortable to be around. So it's the same rules as any other first impression, but you have to tread away from the tendency to kiss butt or not be challenging or in any way. So the emotions that if someone feels contribute to a good first impression are fun. They enjoy your experience of you. That could just be a joke right off the bat and take 5 seconds. Trust. That's a sense that you're someone that you shake their hand, you look them in the eye. Again, easily to communicate. Respect. There is something about you that they want to get to know, to associate with, to get more of. And then the last one, and the order is important, is that you demonstrate interest in them, that you turn attention back to them. The problem that people who are high status often experience is that everyone leads with attention on them, right? So the lead is, oh my gosh, your work is so great. You're so amazing. And this video touched me so much. It was so incredible. And even if that is a person you might want to associate with, it can feel alienating for someone to pedestalize you so quickly right off the jump. Versus if you do the other thing of cracking a joke when you start, look them in the eye, saying hi. They ask you, what do you do? Where are you from? What brings you to this event? You've worked on some sort of answer to that question that points to your value and your values. So this is something that we talk about in my course, Charisma University. We have a worksheet for it. But in short, when you get asked a very common question, where are you from? What do you do? These are some of the fastest ways to generate respect. Most people blow it. They say, I'm from Philadelphia and I do YouTube or I do consulting. But if you instead take these questions as just opportunities to talk about your values. You're like, well, I grew up in this area, but I never fit in because I was an entrepreneur at heart. So I spent a bunch of years traveling Latin America, building my business, and I've just landed in California because I'm huge into summer sports. Like that gives so many chances for the person to decide, oh, I'm an athlete. I want to talk to them about summer sports. Or I'm an entrepreneur. I want to know more about their businesses. Or I traveled Latin America. Did they ever go to Peru or Brazil or whatever? You work your value and your values into these questions, and that gives the other person an opportunity to know something about you that they can respect. And then you can ask them as many questions as you want about them. The problem is with people that we believe are higher status than us, that we enter into that fan mode and just immediately, oh my God, that's so amazing. That's so amazing. You're so amazing. And that can be a nice thing, but there needs to be some reciprocal respect.
Would it be useful to just kind of express that you are a fan to get that energy out?
Totally.
Just be like, I don't want to fanboy out right now, but
yeah, no, you can say so.
Yeah.
I'll shout him out. He, I guess, was just comfortable. He's now on the Iced Coffee Hour. His name is Graham Stephan's partner on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast is named Jack. And I met Jack at an event, and Jack led with, dude, I love your channel. Oh, it's so cool. Dude, your charisma, dude, amazing. But he didn't ask for a photo. He didn't ask with anything. And then was a human after that. So I knew that he was interested, but did not fanboy. And he made one of the best impressions on me of anyone that was able to express that they were a genuine fan and that the videos helped them so much. But then it was just like human after that. Where it can get too long is when people are like, do you remember in that episode where you said that was amazing? You remember and it becomes like a Comic-Con sort of experience where it's the super fan stuff. Yeah, he was able to express the depth very quickly that it was really important to him. And I remember like great impression.
Yeah, my wife is a YouTuber as well, and she gets recognized, probably like every time we go out.
Oh, really?
Not every, maybe like once every 3 times somebody will say, are you so-and-so? Her channel's Gem Goddess.
Gem Goddess. I don't know that one.
We live in a small town and we're trying to make friends, and
yeah,
she found a girl that knows all about her channel, and hopefully she's not watching this, but she was just basically a huge fan of hers. And
yeah,
they couldn't cross that barrier of fan to friend because the girl was like, oh my God, I'm in your car. Oh my God, this is where you live. And it was just like,
yeah, I've been there.
All right.
Where'd they go? I walked into a bar once and a guy said, I didn't know you were coming here. And it's just like, why wouldn't you? It's like I announced where I'm going. So there's this, and this is, the essence is, if you believe that this person isn't a human, it's impossible. Like some people, the old advice of when you're giving a speech, imagine everyone in their underwear. It's like, you have to recognize that this is a person that has flaws, hobbies, interests, boring, shitty takes, all that kind of stuff that everyone that you've ever met has had. If you project onto them, this is one of the hard things, if you project onto them that they are amazing and have the capacity to totally and positively transform your life, you're not going to be able to make a good impression on them. That's one of the catch-22s is if you think that they have the answer to what you need, that they've got the money, that they've got the status, that they've got the thing, you're not going to connect with them. And the truth is they actually don't. Like I remember first time I met Tim Ferriss, I was totally in belief that if Tim just liked me, that my business would explode. And as a result, I made a crappy impression and was super fanboyish. If we ever meet again, I now know that even if I'd met him then, he wasn't going to make my business happen. You can't give someone the thing that they're most desperately craving. And when you recognize that this is not an opportunity to get something from this person, this is an opportunity to learn from, connect with, share with a very interesting human being that I'm especially interested in, but it is not fundamentally going to alter the makeup of my life, you'll do way better.
Yeah. So do you get recognized a lot?
I used to. I don't as much anymore now that I'm not making as much content. And also, it was always at bars. It was always guys. It was always guys. Yeah, always dudes. Always dudes.
Yeah, it's like you get really muscular and buff, and you think, oh, now all the girls are going to like me. But it's really just other guys that are like, looking good, man.
Yeah. Charisma was, and there's women that have gone through, we're like 70-30 or something like that. But the people most likely to recognize me tend to be the guys, or at least the ones most likely to come up to me and say something.
Well, it's probably because YouTube is mostly male, right? It's like 80% male.
Yeah, and if you look at the things, there's different kinds of self-improvement. So women's self-improvement tends in a different sort of genre and direction, and the people, the actors that I'm using, all that kind of stuff, these appeal more to men, probably because they appeal to me.
Hmm. So what's the direction you're going to go in?
I think the internal world. So you mentioned Carl Jung a bunch of times. I have heavily, thank God for Carl Jung, because I've hit he calls it the individuation stage that really kicks into gear when you're 35 years old. And it's when you, dark night of the soul, going through everything in your past, recalling traumas and integrating them, finding your golden shadow, all of your talents that you've disowned and all that kind of stuff, restructuring relationships. My life has been a tumult of inner work for the last several years. And I am so grateful for Carl Jung because without him, I would have felt very insane. So I would love to offer to pay that forward to, in a video format, help people who have done the first thing. They've developed the ego. They've had success. They've figured their relationships out at a persona ego level. I'd love to have content that took them through individuation. Um, it's a very different phase than ego persona solidification and development, which I would say a lot of my initial content is. But I could see it being a really beautiful human development ladder, such that you can come in and watch our videos on how to text a girl if you're like 18 and you want to know the things to say, and you can hopefully take that all the way through the rest of your life if I keep making this. So I guess you could put it that I'll be making content for a version of myself 3 years ago is what I'm going to be looking to do.
Yeah, I don't know anything else like that because there's
Mm.
so much self-help stuff that's directed towards like getting what you want.
Yes,
But then it's like oftentimes when you get what you want, you realize that's not what you actually wanted.
totally.
And so
Totally.
when you get to the top of the ladder, I think you're providing a really valuable service as well as Carl Jung. It's like, what's next? And
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty hard to get into Carl Jung. Like I've tried and it's very dense and you got to read every sentence like 4 times and you still don't
Yeah.
get it. So it's really important that communicators like you dig out those golden gems and deliver them on a platform that we can digest and understand.
Yeah, thank you. I hope to. That would be so amazing. Yeah, he to me is the most brilliant mind of the 20th century. So like to do anything like what he did would be really, really wonderful. I'm curious, what is next for you?
That's a good question. I just had a daughter. So that's why probably childhood development has been on my mind quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's been a big focus and just, I'm in that phase of starting family and, I think I'm hopefully going to have a couple more kids in the next few years. So that's
Mm-hmm.
my personal goal. But as for after school, I want to just keep the animations coming. And then this podcast is like something new I'm trying.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm like very charismatic or a great speaker at all. Like I'm under no illusion that I'm like a Joe Rogan or Chris Williamson or something. But I do think that I can have conversations that offer great value. Like I have good networks and good connections to people like you. And I thought, all right, you know what? Might as well have some conversations and see what happens. And people seem to really like the podcast. So
Great.
I'm going down to Arizona next week to interview Graham Hancock.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that'll be a big one. And so like the podcast is starting to get some momentum and I'm curious to see where it goes, but I don't
Cool.
see myself being like Diary of a CEO or something.
Hmm. Have you enjoyed the podcast yourself, independent of
You know
audience
what? It's weird
reaction?
as I really enjoy it because I'm not that good at it. And so I
Yeah.
feel like each one I'm getting better and I'm learning
Okay.
a lot. And it's just a whole different part of my brain that I'm having to work through now. And I had a lot of anxiety about even stepping in front of a camera. And I was like, maybe I'll just use this whole podcast to like lob my personal woes on you and be like, how can I be a better podcaster? What would you advise? But
I've thought about that a lot. It's a very, very unique experience to be with someone else virtually, which is weird, but also cognizant of an audience. So like we're not having the conversation you and I would have off camera because there's implicit understandings that you and I might have of one another's history or whatever that you're also aware. Like introduce yourself for the audience. It's a very strange style of communication.
yeah, and the first 20 minutes, probably I felt this pressure to like make the
Yep.
conversation really good. And then
I
I
feel that
finally
every
forgot
time.
about it. And then probably half the examples that I wanted to bring up, I'm like, that's too personal. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So I think that this is where I am in my business is I'm not saying you have to do it the same way. Can I drop how much of my management of the audience can I drop? And can I just do the thing? Because if I really do look back at the breakthroughs, I think that there's a stage of the pure creativity, like Rick Rubin talks about, is like you ignore the audience. And then I think that there is a stage of like, okay, let's dial that thumbnail in. Like, let's get the title sharper than that. But I think if you start with the like, how do I make people like it? How do I be comprehensible? For me, it kills the magic of it. So I've been thinking about that a lot with podcasts. And for me, one of the things that I've come to is I really want to, I think going forward, I don't mind this at all, but for mine, I want to do them all in person. It allows for,
that's the next step.
yeah.
Yeah. I think you can still have pretty good conversations online, but it's very much like I say A, you say B.
Yeah.
You say, it's like ping pong.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like, da 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 da. It's like, duh, duh.
Yeah.
Duh. But I think somebody who embodies this authentic podcasting style where you really feel like you're his friend is Theo Vaughn.
Yeah.
And
Theo is so good.
And I just watched you do a breakdown of his conversation with Sean Strickland.
Mm-hmm.
And that breakdown was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It made me, like, your videos make me think for a while. I'm like, God, that was really beautiful, the way that Theo Vaughn handled that situation of Sean Strickland releasing his trauma. A very personal moment, personal and private. And they made it this really beautiful learning experience.
Yeah, I love that video. I'm glad that you liked it. When I make ones like that, I'm proud of myself because that's the shit that I more want to see in the world and want to learn to do myself, and I wish that other people would learn as well. So yeah, Theo's a great example of that authentic communicator, and which is why his podcast is so successful. He can have Donald Trump on one day and then a cafeteria lunch lady the next day, and he's human with all of them. And to me, there's many different styles of podcasts. I've sat with other people, like you mentioned, this one has more of a presentation quality necessarily when it's online because it's you go, I go, share with me this thing. We'll update the audience and give them some value that way. But I would love to do more dynamic, human, unplanned, interactive ones where it's just like, I want to build the skill set of flow, of allow and creating magic unconsciously. That would be something super, super cool.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. And it seems like people don't get the opportunity to just sit down in their lives and have conversations with somebody else for 3 hours. And it's really interesting that podcasts have like emerged as this huge thing, because you would think that our attention span's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And then all of a sudden these like 5-hour podcasts are doing amazing. I have a different theory on why I think it's because we're kind of outsourcing our thinking.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to hear our own voice in our head. We want to hear, yeah.
I think that's definitely contributing part of it.
And it's kind of like, oh man, I wish I could ask questions like Joe Rogan, or I wish I could be as funny as Theo Vaughn. Let's listen to that voice. But, yeah, I'm excited to see what you come out with next. And I hope you don't stop making the Charisma on Command YouTube videos though.
I won't. There's at least 5 in the hopper right now. We're just like having editing and team building issues as I come back and restructure the team.
How big is your team?
So one of the long story, I've alluded to this. There was huge issues inside of the company in terms of like quality of work. So it was bigger. I fired just about everybody, and now I'm building the team back. So tough to say how many there are now, but it's like 4. Not like enormous at this point.
Running lean. That's a pretty good size operation though in today's age.
Yeah, it was 13. Yeah. I mean, I've clearing it out, trying to build back a higher standard of performance in the company.
Yeah, I haven't really been able to let go of control of a lot of things. So I am the one answering all the comments. I'm doing all the posts. I'm doing all the editing, illustrating. I'm going to edit this podcast after. So I need to delegate though. Yeah.
That I'll make a video on that. There's an art to it, which is, one thing is be careful not to abdicate. Delegation is different than abdication, where I would just hand off projects, walk away, and never look at them. You might not make that mistake, but I made that one repeatedly. And you have to transfer responsibility and ownership and then check. seems
That
pretty
makes
obvious in
perfect sense.
retrospect.
Because I do have an assistant, and I'm like, make an after school TikTok page.
Yeah.
And I'll come back like a month later. He's like, what? I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's a combination. It's a combination. You want people that you can give high level directives to and trust that they'll handle it, so that you're not, because this is a trap that people fall into when they've done everything themselves. They think that they need to spell everything out for their employees instead of recognizing that you can build a team of people who you can give high level goals to, and they will figure out how to do it. But if you constantly assume responsibility for everything, even though you've built a team, you will wind up believing that every time they screw up, it's because you weren't clear enough. So just something that I did to be aware of.
But if they're too competent, they usually don't stay around long.
Only if you have a mission worth doing. So this is the thing that I need to recognize is I've been able to attract not the world's best talent because I have not clearly owned the mission of Charisma on Command. The only reason that the best people, most driven entrepreneurial people would ever work for someone else is because they deeply are connected to the mission and purpose of what you do, which is why Elon Musk is able to fill SpaceX with the most genius people who for a long time were like working insane hours, not getting paid relative to their other engineering counterparts. But it's like, we're here to put a man on Mars. Where else do I get to do that? So really getting clear and communicating, like, why are we even here? You know, why is this more than a paycheck is how you keep and retain the most amazing people. And so I'm working on that right now.
Yes, it reminds me of Steve Jobs. You know, all his mantras were very visionary about Apple.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about the CPU or the font or the style of metal they're using. It was all about like this dream big, shoot for the stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Change the world.
So, I'm really grateful you took the time. This has been an awesome conversation. And if anybody wants to find you, Charisma on Command and Charisma University.
Charisma University is our online course. It's our 30-day program. If you want to check it out, the goal of it is to become your most confident and charismatic self in 30 days. It's the best thing I've ever made on the topic. And it definitely is the, like I said, it's the first ladder, which is I'm going to get to people, you know, how am I going to make people really like me? That is the course for you. I'll be making the second ladder over the next couple of years, which is, okay, you've succeeded at that. What comes next? But if you want to check that out, Charisma University, you can just Google that.
Awesome. Well, you certainly embody the charisma and the likableness. So well done there.
Thank you, man.